It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by the head coach of the Oaks Christian football program, Charlie Collins. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast, coming today from Oaks Christian High School in Westlake Village, California, the home of the Lions. I'm Phil George, and our guest here today, he is the head coach of the football program here at Oaks Christian, Coach Charlie Collins.
Hey, yeah.
Coach, welcome to the show.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Happy to have you here, guys. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel on YouTube, and share the show with your friends. Now let's go ahead and get into it. Coach, you want to give us a brief introduction of your background in football? You definitely have one of the most accomplished backgrounds, both as a player and a coach. Just to give our viewers a brief rundown of your experience in both of those areas up to this point.
All right, well, I'll probably try to be brief because, I'm not the self-promotion guy, of course, but obviously I've been involved in football for most of my life. It seems like I've always just been doing football. But, my career started, from playing in the inner city like most kids and, dreaming like most kids to, play on the next level and all that. Back then, obviously, it wasn't all the social media and stuff like that. But I was just, driven to play and play at a high level. And then I found myself able to do that, starting, after I left Manyards High School. That's where I played during my high school days. And then from there, I went to Cal State Northridge, who was a great program at that time. Obviously, it doesn't have football. But from there, it's funny, my journey to Canada was kind of crazy because I was a junior at Cal State Northridge, and they had a free agent tryout on our campus. And that was my junior year. And I just kind of went out just for the fun of it, just to say, let's go out and work out. And lo and behold, they signed me at my junior year at Northridge. And next thing you know, I was playing with the Edmonton Eskimos. So, yeah, it was a kind of a shock and a ride that I didn't expect, obviously. At
that time, how aware of the CFL were you, and what kind of were your expectations headed into that tryout?
Well, I knew a little bit about it because obviously Warren Moon had played there, and we played at the same junior college, although we didn't play together. So I was aware of the CFL and the great players that played up there. So I was actually intrigued to go play on a bigger field. Obviously, the CFL field is 65 yards wide and 120 yards long. So actually, it fit my style of play, wide open football. So I had a great time up there playing.
You mentioned that when you were coming up as an athlete, the kind of culture around athletics was different. There wasn't a lot of social media. Right. How has the culture of amateur athletics changed during your time participating?
I think a lot of it is nowadays you have to really find kids because of the social media and all the things that can distract them and all the other things they have to do. You got to have to find the kids that are just love the game. I always say is football important to them. So it's changed from the standpoint, you still have those kind of players who, like me, that want to do it, but then you have the players who like to be around the game. So I think it's changed from more of the self-promotion aspect, where now young players now are more focused on their own personal stats and all the NIL crap that's involved, and where we try to keep it real old school around here and just grimy and gritty, to say the least.
Going back to your playing days, you definitely have one of the more distinguished playing backgrounds of some of the coaches that we've had on this show. Like you said, you had an All-American career at CSUN, then played a few years in the CFL. From there, what ultimately became your inspiration for getting into coaching?
Actually, it was, once I got done playing, as soon as I came back home, a good friend of mine said, "Coach, are you done playing?" And at the time, I wasn't quite sure. So I went out to help out at Santa Monica JC, since it was close to my home, and lo and behold, the next thing I know, this kid named Chad Johnson walks on the campus, and quite funny story of Chad Johnson. I didn't know he knew me, and because it wasn't no social media, but somehow through the word of mouth, he found out about the program we had at Santa Monica. Obviously, we had some great players there. And next thing you know, Chad Johnson shows up at Santa Monica College, which that was a good treat, to say the least.
Yeah, and your time at Santa Monica is definitely well chronicled for the time that you did spend working with Chad Johnson and also Steve Smith. We'll get to specifically into those guys in a little bit. But before that, the junior college route is really an avenue of development that doesn't get a ton of attention despite producing some pretty high-level players. Aaron Rodgers, Jason Pierre-Paul are two more recent NFL stars who have spent time at that level. Earlier, Keyshawn Johnson and Warren Moon, like like you mentioned earlier. So in today's game of recruiting, obviously everybody wants to collect every D1 offer as they can. And I mean, why shouldn't they? If you can get it, why shouldn't they? But why should athletes also consider the junior college route as a viable alternative for their development?
That's a great question. Obviously, you mentioned the key word, development. A lot of times they come out of high school, depending on the program that they're at, they're just not ready. And, they might be ready in terms of academically and in terms of that, but in terms of just development inside out, technically and fundamentally, they need that time to just grow. And some of them are just not even grown into their adult selves. So I think that's a good training ground to develop, to make sure to even see if you are ready for that next level, to say the least.
So Chad Johnson and Steve Smith were, of course, the two most high-profile players that you had the chance to coach at that level. But beyond them, what are some of the experiences that you had developing other athletes and seeing them transfer on to that next level?
Obviously, spending time with Larry Fitzgerald, Randy Moss, to name a few. I used to do a camp in the summers with all the wideouts. I'd go down to Florida with Santana Moss, Andre Johnson. It was a big deal we did every year, and it was kind of my own receiver academy, and I was able to just bring all those guys together and teach the game, because in pro football you'll find that because of the rules and the amount of time they can spend with the players, we created that platform back then to allow the guys to actually develop, it was all about development then, and just work on their craft. So it was a good time doing it, and that's what's probably missing in pro football now. There's not enough development.
And you're still involved today on the developmental side of football. What are some of the things that you're doing today to bring back to the game, so the things that in your mind you feel are currently lacking from it?
I think, you mentioned social media, nobody understands the game. I've taken the classroom and bring it back into, especially here at Oaks, film study and understanding the game from the, more of a schematic, perspective. I mean, the analytics and all that are great, but kids got to get better at playing between the ears, understanding the what's and the whys. And so what we've done is taken it, I call it like a football university type thing, where we've been able to take them and make them understand not just their jobs, but what their defense is doing and what can they anticipate and all the other things that comes with it that you don't have the opportunity to do it, anywhere else, but we're able to do it here.
You actually created, along with Chad Johnson, a wide receiver training app, right?
Absolutely.
What is that?
Called In the Breaks. We started that, and the whole idea was that back then, and I think it was probably ahead of its time. In the Breaks was an app that it allowed parents, obviously if they couldn't have access to me, but it was a tutorial app that allowed kids to, from start, stance, releases, separation techniques, just a whole host of things. And we created that just to help kids get on the cutting edge of football and football technique from the wide receiver position. So it was a fun app, and actually we're still looking into doing more things, because I think that's a tool that can definitely be used, particularly with parents who can't afford these expensive trainers, but they can still have an app that they can go take their kids to the park and try to find out some fundamental things that they can get their kids to do.
So it's really a lower cost alternative to some of the more pricey private coaches, training academies that obviously not everybody has the access to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You want to make it worse. Our goal was to be able to reach every kid that was able to, if they had a phone and they were able to have access to internet, we want them to have the ability to see and learn without having to pay.
And what year was that you guys put that together?
Well, it was after my year with the Bengals. I would say it was 2000, I would say 2008, somewhere around then. We put it together, and it was a fun project.
And how many users do you have for it? What's been like the tangible impact by how you can tell?
Well, I have to have people answer a lot of emails for me for sure, because I can't respond to everybody. But, it's been good in terms of that. And it's great when you can give feedback from a kid that's 3,000 miles away that watched the app and some things you've done, and then has been able to call me and send me video of his game, working that particular technique. And that's really the goal for me, was to get them to be able to advance themselves, beyond the sport.
Why is that something that you've taken such an interest in? Obviously, you take a high level in developing the players who play for the program that you happen to be coaching at the time, but why expand that reach more nationally and try and impact everybody that you can across the nation?
I think that's what's again, that's what's missing. I think so much just get caught up into the hustle and bustle of training, and it's trainers everywhere. If you go online, you're going to see the foot doctor, the hand doctor, every doctor you want. And I think for me, I was a grassroots type of kid growing up, and I didn't have that person there to be the trailblazer. And so for me, I was really driven by just trailblazing and being that person who connected the dots and whatnot. And I think that was an important thing for me. It's a kind of a life thing that I've always kind of done and I'll continue to do.
One thing that I want to go back on and touch on your time in Santa Monica, obviously we talked about the viability of the junior college route to, really be able to get to the pros, and talked about a few of the names that have come out of that level. I just want to go back and reiterate that you had on that team two guys at the same time who not only ended up transferring and starting at the college level, not only made it to the NFL, but became two of the most dominant wide receivers of their era, and some would argue Hall of Fame level talent.
Yeah.
You told us a little bit about Chad Johnson's arrival, but just go into more depth, just the experience that you had coaching those two in particular.
Well, the one thing about it, they had passion for the game, so it was easy to coach them. And what's interesting is people don't know Chad Johnson never played wide receiver until he met me, saying with Steve Smith. And so they didn't have any bad habits, that's for sure. But being able to take athletes that were, pure athletes and develop them the craft inside out, which was good. So it was like clay, it was just like they were raw chicken. And they just needed some seasoning and whatnot. We had, matter of fact, in the documentary Football Life, we talk about how they came and how raw they were. But I think they were just different guys. They loved the game. They played with what I call a nasty edge and a passion for the game, much like me. So we worked 7 days a week. And that's just the absolute truth, just working there. And then, sure enough, I would say at the time they were in the league, they were the two most dominant players. They went to multiple Pro Bowls, I think 7 straight Pro Bowls, and even TJ Houshmandzadeh, who's someone else who I coached. I was fortunate enough to have them in Cincinnati when I was with the Bengals, and those were the first two tandem of wide receivers that went to the Pro Bowl in the same year. So I was pretty proud of that.
So I know Chad Johnson was a quarterback before he met you. What was Steve Smith?
Steve was a hurdler in track, running back, defensive back, much like TJ. They were not wide receivers before they started. Yeah.
So just talking to you and, knowing a little bit of your background, you definitely take a very cerebral approach to coaching football and development. I'd love to just kind of get inside your mind at that time when you saw this track star and this quarterback. What was going through your mind that you came to the conclusion these guys are going to be Pro Bowls at the wide receiver position?
They love ball. And that's when I bring in kids, even here at Oaks. I'm not really concerned about whether they have talent, whether they love it is the important thing. They love ball, then they work tirelessly to be the best. I mean, they wanted to be the best out there, and they worked every day to do it. So, I mean, I would say that part of them, just that work ethic and that that was innate. You didn't have to push them to work.
Yeah, and Chad Johnson in particular, I know you guys have a particularly strong relationship. He said on multiple occasions that he credits you essentially for his entire career, not just from the move that you suggested from the quarterback position to the wide receiver position, but also the impact that you've had in his personal life as a mentor. Talk about the friendship that you guys have had the ability to build and grow over the last few decades, and the impact that you've had on each other through football and beyond.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when Chad came, he was kind of, in a place in Miami where he was getting himself into a lot of trouble. And I think that's where his grandmother, Bessie Flowers, somehow found me out in California. And I think it just became, he wasn't so much more of a player when I first met him as more so than a son. It's almost I was given another son, stayed in my house. So my approach was just trying to just raise him just to be a good kid first, and then using football as the carrot to make him chase, because I know he loved it, but it was all built on having the discipline to do the things that were necessary to get better, breaking a lot of habits, which he had a ton of them. But I think over the time, it was just not a relationship, in terms of player, coach. It was more or less, I was coach, uncle, dad, friend, all wrapped in one, same with Steve. So for me, it was just a matter of just build up on a relationship of like your own kids, just trust and it's just build over time.
Yeah, our last guest on the program, Romeo Pelham, the head coach down at Millikan, shared a similar viewpoint that he has of trying to serve as that role in the lives of other people. Because, for some, yes, they play sport as an avenue to have a dominant college career and go play in the NFL. But for some, it's their take it out of a rough situation. For others, it's a way to learn, basic life skills and career skills. So how much of that do you implement into your coaching, whether it's here at Oaks Christian or any of the other avenues that you're involved in?
That's a great question. That's every day, because at the end of the day, they play football, but they're people first, and I think with players, once they realize that you care about them as people, and want them, to be successful. I always say their success is my success. And so for me, I just deal with them as people. And that's where you get them at. You got to deal with the whole person. And it starts right there with the relationship with that. I always say, when people ask me about my coaching philosophy, I always say three things constantly all the time. You're mentoring, you're developing, and your teaching is the last thing. But the mentorship is critical, because without that, you don't have the relationship. And then development piece is a constant. We're constantly doing that same way with the mentorship. And then teaching, I don't believe in coaching as coaching. I look at it, if you're not teaching it, you're not coaching it. And so those three things have been constant in my approach to players on every level, because really it's the relationship first before you get that builds the trust.
What's your relationship with those guys now that we talked about? Same
way. Absolutely. With Chad, it's even probably worse. He just bugs the hell out of me, right? Thinks he wants to coach, but he'll never coach. But it's still have the same relationship. They come out and see me in the off season. I have them come up here and different players speak to my kids and tell their stories, and so they can understand and get the real view of what it really is, as opposed to what it appears on social media, for example.
That's got to be a thrill to have a guy like that come out and talk to the team. And we'll get in a little bit later to some of the, really high level former players that you've had on your coaching staff. But how much of a thrill of that is for the kids to have a Chad Johnson or a Hushmanzada or whoever it is come out and really show them what kind of grind that is?
Well, it's good because they're able to tell the kids they used to be them. And so it gives them a spark to say, I can be the next this, and hey, by the way, I can be the next that. And then they realize they're not just these big old icons that sit on the shelves. They are exactly just like them and have the same struggles, same issues. That they've just managed to get through the cracks.
What are some of the most common themes, whether it's you talking to your team on a daily basis or whether it is a former pro who comes back to talk to the kids? What are some of the most common themes that come up in that discussion of what it takes to succeed at the next level?
Well, the kids always want to know what did they do in terms of the workouts, and what did they do to get better, and all those things. And I think kids always want to, they're dreamers, so obviously they want information. But I think what comes on constantly is what did you do, and what did it take, and those steps. What was the progression of getting there? And I think their kids are always yearning for just that information if they can duplicate that. So,
yeah, I'll reference again our last guest, Romeo Pelham, and one of the things that he said on that note that really jumped out at me. He's a guy that he had D1 experience, and he spent some time in minicamp with the Carolina Panthers, and also, like yourself, played in the CFL. And the thing that he said that really stuck out, I got to find it here, is that at each level you rise to, the opportunities to succeed and advance get less and less. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm sure you could speak to, your coaches can speak to, and these former players that you've brought in can speak to as well. What are some of the most important things to stress to your athletes right now, that they're doing right now, whether it's on the field or in the classroom or anywhere, to ensure that they're in the best positions to succeed in football or in any career that they choose?
Well, I told them it's important to place a value on their time, because you definitely can't get time back. And so it's nothing to be, you can't take today or tomorrow or anything for granted, can't take your next practice for granted. So I try to get them to maximize being in the moment and being, a lot of times a coach might say, we got to get better today. You'll hear me constantly say, we got to get better every rep. And so it's a constant thing that we beat in, and we got to be better than we were yesterday. The next rep has to be a better, even if it wasn't a perfect rep. And so the emphasis is brick by brick mentality more so than it's more play by play more than practice by practice. So that's always been our approach to it.
I want to get into your time specifically here at Oaks Christian, but before that, one other thing that you were involved in is you're also a member of the Pro Pro Football Hall of Fame instructional staff, and very similar to a lot of what we've been talking about on this show so far. A primary role is working with developing youth football players across the country. Mm-hmm. What's been your role with that organization, and how'd you come to get involved with them?
Well, I knew David Baker for a while, when I was with the Bengals, and I would always go down there and do camps for them and help out. And then it occurred to them, they realized what I was doing in Southern California with, camps of my own. And they said, Charlie, if there's any way you can put together basically a curriculum for kids, not just at all positions, where it can be like a classroom. They can get a feel for what pro football training camp is like. From being in the classroom, being in the film room, understanding how to get on the board and talk football and do football, and then be able to go back and film themselves and watch themselves and kind of teach them, show them how to not just get better as a player, but also get smarter. So it was more of an academy concept where we were just trying to bring a football experience, but more of a teaching aspect to it. And that was the whole idea of it. It's been a great thing since we started.
And what's been some of the results from your time in that program?
We've seen a lot of good players come out of there and go on and go to college and do well, simply by coming there and getting the information. A lot of times they don't have access to get around us and get the right instruction. Sometimes you can go a lot of places, doesn't mean you're always going to get that right instruction. So I think what's been good is they've been able to come and get it in real time, and be able to have access to us through emails and whatnot, and be able to talk and whatnot. So it's been a great thing.
You said that there's been some prominent names to come out of there at the college and professional level. Anybody that our viewers might know?
Oh, Braxton Miller, I had him in the program.
Of course.
Josh Malone, who's here every offseason, stays at my home when he's in town. It's with the Tennessee Titans now. Just to name a few, several players have come through there, and next thing you know, boom. Like say, Braxton Miller is another perfect example of a kid who was a quarterback at Ohio State, turned wide receiver. So he was a project for me as well.
He was playing both of those positions at Ohio State simultaneously, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of people do that at that high of a level at the same time.
Yeah.
So whether with the Pro Football Hall of Fame or any of the institutions that you've had the pleasure of coaching at, how rewarding has it been for you to be able to touch so many lives through the game of football?
Football has been more of the bigger blessing what I would ever have thought, because as a player, you're doing you, right? And so you can do you and whatnot. But I think the basic blessing, you've been able to share your life experiences and play through them. And if they're receptive enough and open enough, they'll find that there's a lot of secrets in those experiences, and being able to give it back and pay it forward and see somebody else do it and do it better and do it on a higher level. That's been the whole goal for me, and it's always been my dream to keep developing a higher level of athlete from year to year, generation to generation. That's what it's been about for me.
So getting into your time now at Oaks Christian, you've been the head coach here since 2018, previously serving as the offensive coordinator. You coached on the team that won the 2017 CIF championship. And then the next year, your first year as the head coach, you led the team to the number 8 ranking in the entire nation. Now, those are obviously two pretty big, bold headlines, but through your eyes, I want to ask what has been the evolution of this program and just a brief history during your time and the years that preceded it.
Well, obviously before I got to Oaks, they had a football history in terms of, what they did in those years. I think the biggest difference probably was they didn't play in those bigger, higher divisions. I think, at that time, it was kind of, I think kind of status quo, I would say kind of status quo and where they were at, and there was no movement. When I came, my idea, was just to hold the line, just not not mess it up. But I also came here understanding that if we're going to be distinctive in football in this county, and I wanted to take it past being the best team in Ventura County or the best team in LA County, that team, I told him, we're not looking to be the best team in California anymore. We're trying to be the best team in the country. And so that takes a different kind of mindset. Also takes a different mindset that I have to pour into them coaches, because I got to drive the bus, and the preparation, the attention to detail, and all those things that go in the off season. That's been the bar for me. And actually, we haven't gotten to that point again, because obviously through injuries, through COVID and all those things. But that's always been the goal for me, not just to come and win Marmonte League. that's a cliche. We want to win it all. I mean, we played 14 games last year. Started on 5. Most people would have thought, let's just pack it in, for example, and next year we're young. I'm probably the only one that thought, no, we're trying to play for a title, and obviously we got there, didn't win it. But the mindset of this team is we're not just okay with just being just okay. If you're not trying to be the best or good, better, best is kind of a slogan that we use on this team. We're trying to be the best in this county and ultimately the best in the country. And that's something that, as long as I'm coaching here, that's going to be the mindset and the attitude of this team.
So you talk about that mindset and that attitude shift. Obviously, another big part of it is really just hoping that the right players enroll at your program and you get some really high-level talent. And you have, aside from that, what are the steps that you actually have to take that mindset, take that attitude, and actually convert it to wins and losses on the field?
Well, obviously you have to have Jimmys and Joes, as we say in coaching. But I think players and parents, it's all about recruiting, not just players, but I don't like to use the term recruiting, but having the right kind of parents, because it's a team thing in terms of getting that kind of player. But I think I always use the term street cred. When you have enough street cred, players want to follow, they want to follow that success and they want to become a part of it. And obviously you got to find the right mix of players that can band together like brothers. But for me, it's just really trying to hand pick and find. I treat it as a draft, really, just trying to find the right mix of players that fit the culture here, because Oaks is probably not for every kid, because it's obviously it's a high level curriculum academically, but at the same time, if you are what I call a real football player, they typically want to choose a place like Oaks because they're looking beyond the game of football as well.
Yeah, now you say the right kind of kid. Obviously, you're not just talking about football talent. What are some of those elements of the ideal athlete archetype that fit the culture here?
Well, character is a big deal, and if you don't have no character, you don't have no team. So we looking for high character kids, that obviously, the kids are going to be kids, but we always say, we want to get the character first, because, if you got a character kid, you can do amazing things with him. We use the term coach killing. If you got bad kids, you're going to get coach killers, right? And they're going to blame the coach for everything. So we look for high character guys that they have passion for the game. And if they have passion for it, then we want them, because we know if they got passion, they high character, you can coach it up, and that's the kind of kids we look for.
So let's put some names on some of these guys that have participated in your program. We talked about the 2017 and 28 teams that had a lot of success, and those teams had some kind of star power, among others. Kayvon Thibodeaux, this year's number 5 pick in the NFL draft. Zach Charbonnet, who started as a running back at Michigan and now he's at UCLA, were on those two teams specifically. Michael Pittman, a few years prior, before you arrived, was a star on the team, and now he's in his 3rd year in the NFL. So in addition to being a program that's always going to be in the hunt for a championship, in addition to being a program that's going to, preach the proper character and academic values to help these guys succeed, you're also really developing a reputation as a program that's going to get their guys to that next level and see sustained success.
Absolutely. And that's the goal. I mean, if you're just concerned without winning football games, then you're going to miss the whole deal. I think you want to make sure that your guys are prepared so they make the next. So they represent you, and you want to make sure that you prepare them and put them in a position where they can step in as freshmen, like those guys, and hit the ground running. And we have a couple of kids that are going to be on pace to do the same thing. But I think that's where it is when we talk about the development side of things. That's where it starts. You prepare them differently. Our kids are not just big athletes that can run around. If you sit down on the board and talk football to them, they can talk to a college coach intelligent, and they'll know he's been coached up simply by how they talk ball. So I think just raising that consciousness of football IQ, which is a big deal, which doesn't get talked about. You see so much drill this, drill that, but nobody talks about the IQ of it. And that's where we're trying to raise the bar in terms of that. That's why we feel so confident we go into games that our players can adjust on the fly. We can handle multiple things that take place, because that's the preparation that's involved in getting our kids to that level.
Talking about Kayvon specifically, there's obviously been a lot of buzz with him being such a high draft pick and set to make his debut here in a couple of weeks. Can you give us a little preview as to what fans should expect out of him at that level?
Well, he's motivated. We just did an article in the New York Post, and we were talking about, his journey. I was in that interview. And I think KT has always been driven by, being from the same neighborhood that I'm from, that he's got something to prove to himself, not anybody else. He knows he can play, but he's going to prove to himself that, he's deserving of that pick. And he has some high expectations for himself, much like Zach Charbonnet, but KT is, I would say he can't wait. He's chomping at the bits to unleash it, to say the least.
An important thing that you brought up about your coaching philosophy and how to implement it is that you need good help. And just as you've had a pretty star-studded roster of players over the years, your coaching staff has had some star power on it as well. One of your first assistants that you brought in was Eric Dickerson, the Hall of Fame running back and Los Angeles Rams legend. What kind of experience was that for your athletes to have an NFL Hall of Famer on the sideline in every game and out with them at practice every day?
I can't say enough about Eric, because when I took over, he wasn't, obviously he's really busy, and he didn't want to coach. He's not a coach, and he didn't want to coach. But obviously when I took over, first thing I said is, hey man, you coming with me. Me and Eric go back. We have a great relationship, and actually he has a daughter who runs track here. But, he had no choice. I wanted him just to be around that and just get him back involved with the game as well. But I wanted the guys to be able to touch and feel that this is a guy that did on a high level. So any nugget that the kids were able to get from that was just a treat for that, to have them there for the information that they were able to get and provide it to Zach and those guys in terms of being a more patient runner, but being explosive, but being more patient. So it's always good. And he has an open coach pass, to say the least, with me. When he's not busy, he's always there and involved. And he still comes to practice here and there throughout the season. So he's been doing that since I've been here.
And he's not the only guy with NFL experience that has been on your staff from time to time. Greg Townsend, 13-year defensive end for the Raiders. Roland Williams, he spent 5 years in the NFL as a tight end. And now your coaching staff is primarily filled out by just several of the most prominent, winningest, accomplished high school and small college coaches in Southern California. How have you over the years been able to build that kind of network and attract that kind of elite coaching talent here to Oaks Christian?
I think it goes back to, trailblazing, the work that I've done and the success that I've had in coaching, being one of the first people coming out the inner city to do, a lot of those type of things that had, prior to me, I couldn't say who I knew is, that is trailblazed as much. But I think those coaches want to be around. They love to coach and love kids, but I think them, iron sharpens iron, as we say. And wanting to be around that and wanting to be a part of something that we feel can be real special and create our own type legacy is something that they've been intrigued by. And I'm glad I don't have to force them to want to be here. They just want to be around it, which is, it's kind of nice, because then you don't always have the luxury in high school football.
Well, and going back to earlier, what you said about having street cred, I'm sure it really helps in terms of instruction and development to have that many guys in the locker room who have all been there at the professional level at one point or another.
Right. Because kids always want kids are going to challenge you all the time, right? So when kids challenge you, when they know you've been there, done it, and you could show them and they can see themselves get better, then you really don't have a problem with it. They kind of just tend to follow. So I think they respect the work over time, and especially if they can go and Google it, So we've had a good time with that.
And I brought up Roland specifically. He's a guy like you who's been involved in mentorship and development since his time playing. During his NFL days, he was a Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. I'm guessing that it's not a coincidence that a guy like that, renowned throughout the football world as being a man of tremendous character, finds his way onto your staff.
Yeah. Roland, I knew Roland before I got here at Oaks. Obviously, he has a son that's a great wide receiver on our team, Justice Williams. But when I got here, Roland was one of those guys. Was a big advocate. Actually, after the 2017 season, he knew I was thinking about going back to the NFL, and he was one of the people who said, "Charlie, if there's an opportunity that comes and you want to come back, what would you do?" And I said, I kind of didn't really give it much thought. But Roland was one of those people who was a big advocate of me coming back. Zach and saying, come here and just trying to change the program and change the culture. So he was the one to start poking me about, getting involved and taking over the program.
So let's go ahead and get into the current state of both your program and the Marmonte League. To set it up, you're a member of the Marmonte League, which stretches across the San Fernando Valley up into Ventura. Last year, St. Bonaventure was the league champion, and this year the league has added Simi Valley and Bishop Diego, two very good teams. So this is really shaping up to be a very competitive league with a lot of talent here in the Marmonte League. Go ahead and talk about, before we get into your team specifically, that level of competition that you're expecting in this new look league.
Obviously for us, we thrive on, I think, you have to be uncomfortable to get better, and so, if you had a lot of, for example, games that weren't of that magnitude, I don't know how better your team would get. But I think adding Simi Valley and Bishop Diego is exciting for one, that you don't have to spend so much time. We have more teams. You don't have to find so many non-league games anymore. So for that matter, but also you have some great coaches with both programs. They're going to be well coached, and that's really how you like it, because it really raises the bar for your program. For us, we've been in a lot of tough games since I've been here, and I've actually always been victimized of scheduling some tough games. We had probably the toughest non-league schedule last year. So for us, we're built for that kind of competition, and we embrace it actually. So where some people shy away from it, actually, I like that kind of schedule because it keeps you on the edge, and that's how we want to play it. We want to play it on the edge.
Who are some of the guys that you're excited about specifically on your sideline this year? Obviously, Johnny Thompson, Chase Farrell have been turning a lot of heads. Christian Noose was a sophomore All-American last year. So we'll go ahead and start with them and anybody else that you think we should watch out for this year.
Well, you mentioned those. Johnny Thompson, obviously, he's 1,000-yard rusher. We expect the same from him if he stays healthy. We have a couple of backs behind him that are really good. A young freshman named Charbonnet is just going to be special. But also, like I mentioned, Justice Williams, who had a breakout time. We got to the playoff last year when he began to really break out of his shell. He's 6'3", almost 6'4" now, 210 pounds. He's my war daddy, I call him. And then with exception that we bring in a couple of young quarterbacks that we feel pretty good about, with Devin Tate and Nate Bennett. But I think the spinner that people don't talk about is we have a really, really talented freshman that he's been offered by SC, and Devon Benjamin. It's going to be a special kid. And there's a host of others. Matt Earhart, who had 150 tackles last year. We returned 8 starters. Jalen Lewis, who was hurt in the league championship game, is one of the better players on our team. So we're loaded in terms of our skill guys, and we feel like this, in terms of the skill guys, I feel this in terms of that level, they're pretty comparable to some of our better teams in terms of skill. So we feel really good about our skill guys.
As we sit here today, we're less than a week out from kickoff. By the time our viewers are seeing this, your first game against Chaminade will have already been in the books. In advance of that, what are some of your biggest takeaways from summer and training camp, and what are some of the most important things you're really going to be focusing on during those first few games of non-conference play?
Well, obviously, we want to stay healthy. We put a lot of time this offseason, especially in the spring, just getting bigger, stronger, faster. So we're a much stronger team, definitely a more smarter team. So we'll be definitely looking to start more faster than what we did last year. Obviously, those young guys that had to play because of having injuries early on, they got a lot of valuable playing experience, throughout the season and also towards the postseason. So we're just looking for, just to, stay healthy. And if we're healthy, we don't really care what's in front of us. We just feel that, we'll be prepared to, face what's in front of us.
You guys are going right after in the non-conference schedule. You talked about how important it is to schedule quality non-conference opponents, and with all the high-level talent being added to the Marmonte League, not having to go too far to find it. But let's go ahead and run down those first few games. Back-to-back road games against Chaminade and Sierra Canyon. We've had both of their coaches on this show, featured both of their programs on Canon Sports. We know how good they are. Neutral site game down in San Diego against an out-of-state team from Colorado, and then back home against Sarah. Mm-hmm. What is the mindset of your team headed into that really tough stretch to start off the year?
I think, it was fun this summer having to see Sarah in Simi Valley and the Hog tournament and in the 7-on-7 tournament. We was able to see where we were with our athletes against theirs, and we felt we fared pretty well against both of them. I think the biggest challenge, and the reason why I wanted to see them in the summer so our players can see it, because there's some things that I know about the teams that my players don't know about them or think they are. Sometimes they're not always who you think they are, and so I kind of presented that and challenge for them during the passing leagues. But, one thing's for sure, you start off with those 2 games and you don't have to worry. It won't get too much harder than up to Sierra Canyon in terms of, and if it does, we're already built for it. But I think having that and then seeing Sarah, which is right now, based on where the rank is 5 in the city standing for what it's worth. But I think we match up against all of them well and actually looking forward to playing all of them, quite frankly.
Tell me about that game down in San Diego. It's becoming kind of a tradition for this program to participate in it.
Well, the Honor Bowl is a great thing because obviously it illuminates the military and obviously all the armed forces who have fought and obviously died for this country. And they do a great job of putting on that game. I've done it every year because it gives us a chance to go. I like going on the road. It seems like we seem to play better when we are away from campus. I don't know why that is, but it gives us a chance to kind of exhale a little bit, play on a Saturday night. It's an ESPN game. It's pretty exciting for the kids and families for that matter. And then, like I said, by the time we get in the league, we pin our ears back because we know now we're gonna be ready to push, And so we're excited. I'm stoked about the schedule.
So one way or another, I'm sure by the time you guys come home for that game against Sarah, you're going to know a lot about your team that may be sitting here today you don't right now.
Absolutely. We'll definitely know what kind of grit we have for sure. We know we got talent. I'm just trying to see how much grit we have. And if we got talent and grit by that time, then I would be having a different conversation for sure.
How much is this place going to be rocking when you guys come home for that first game against Sarah next month?
It's you said the word already. It will be rocking. And we're hoping to come back home after that game without a loss. We don't want to. We feel like we want to make a push. Sarah's a good football team. Like I said, Sierra Canyon's a good football team. But what better way is to go on the road and beat them all, right? And that's why I attitude: go over there and beat Chaminade. Go over there and beat Sierra Canyon. Go to San Diego and beat them. Go just beat them all. And we'll providing we don't have any injuries or no hiccups, that's our intention, to be quite honest. Our intention is to go out there and go after them, for sure.
Well, that is one heck of a pep talk and a great way to close out this episode today. Head coach Charlie Collins, Oaks Christian Football, thank you so much for joining the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we want to wish you luck this Friday against Chaminade and going forward the rest of this season. Again, if you guys haven't already, please make sure to like this show, subscribe to this channel, and share the show with your friends. Thanks once again to Coach Collins for joining us. Good luck to Oaks Christian, and we will see you next time on the Cannon Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.